Oh, where can my blue team be? Denmark took them away from me. They've ran off to 12.7, so we got to get good in the Eurofighter Typhoon. Thank you very much. Calm down, ladies, calm down, femboys. I'm going to be here all night because I'm playing the best plane in the game, the Eurofighter 2000, the Eurofighter Typhoon, the Typhoon FGR Mark IV, the British Eurofighter. I'm doing it for the king. I am here to save Great Britain from the Red Menace. Because I haven't done a top tier video in a while, and I figured I'd let the patch, mature a little bit instead of running out and playing exactly the same thing over and over and over again. But we are playing the Eurofighter again because, well, number one, I do like the plane, and number two, it is newsworthy. It is worth talking about. And the reason that I'm covering the plane is because with the new patch, Gaijin has rolled out some changes that end up being pretty substantial in regards to the way that radars work and the way that MAWS works, and then some pretty relatively minor ones in regards to the way that the flight model works. Because what is happening right now is the Eurofighter community has been let down again and is completely disappointed in the plane because I really don't know why. It doesn't really make any sense because you go and you read the comments and people will tell you things unironically that this plane is less maneuverable than an Su-27. It bleeds way more speed than it should. It doesn't meet its performance requirements based on ESR 90, and it's just been given the British tax and made artificially bad. And it's all nonsense, especially in the context of Sim. In the context of AirRB, maybe a little bit less so. And the reason I say that is because people in Sim do not understand how the flight control limits work and how different modes kind of approach their G limits. Because here's the thing. You can go to StatShark and you can make your EM diagram and it's going to show you the maximum limits for full manual controls. Most people don't fly in full manual controls all of the time. In fact, I would say that's kind of stupid to do so. At the same time, the instructor limit is different than the manual control limit, which is different than the SAS damping limit. SAS damping, by the way, is basically Gaijin's approximation of what the true fly-by-wire system should be. What Gaijin has done with the latest update is the Eurofighter's initial turn rate was basically reduced at high speeds so that in AirRB and instructor, it doesn't do 16, 17 Gs on low fuel at high altitude where you're just immediately into the notch. In SB, your damping limits are still pretty much the same. You're still kind of like right around that 11.5 G mark. Like if you go to StatShark and put SAS damping on and put a Rafale and a Eurofighter side by side, all of the lines basically overlap. The Eurofighter is infinitesimally better technically, but in so far as it's a better plane in Sim, that's kind of debatable. I would still say that in the tier list of planes that we have right now with all the new stuff, the Su-30, the F-18, the Eurofighter, and the Rafale beyond comparison is better than everything else. The radar kind of carries it, the micas are still really strong, and the whole entire kind of like sensor suite together just like working closely to like something that you would expect or working kind of seamlessly is a lot nicer than, say, for instance, something with dated technology like the F-16 or the Eurofighter because of mechanically scanned radar nonsense. Now, speaking of radars, the rollout of TWS Plus, the reason I didn't cover this like right away and just run out to make a top tier video is because I look at this, I'm like, this is probably still a work in progress. I know some changes to radars are still in the works. There's going to be like a speed gate change thing, and I'm not the guy to cover like data mine stuff, so I'm not really concerned about it. I will say that what TWS Plus has done is basically the idea is that instead of taking every second sweep to update the contact, it'll try to memorize the contact and then update it every sweep, and effectively it makes your radar update its contacts that's already acquired a little bit quicker. The other thing that they have changed, one of the biggest changes, and thankfully it only took like a year to do, and only took, people complaining about it very aggressively for a very long time, is the double scan radar bug, where it goes top to bottom and then bottom to top has been fixed, and now it goes top to bottom, starts at the top again. So your refresh rates are a lot more consistent. This means that pretty much every radar in the game across the board is now in a state that's like reasonably usable. Even something that is really, really mediocre to bad, like the SU-27, turning your radar on is not the liability that it once was. It's still a little bit like but it works now. That's like a huge improvement. You have replaced the washing machine with a brick in it with like a fax machine. It's a pretty big deal. Like, it makes flying something like the SU-27, it makes it a lot more manageable. It's a huge, like, I can't overstate how big of a difference these two radar changes have made, at least for me personally, and not even just in the Eurofighter. The other thing that this change has on the Eurofighter, though, it means that your wide scan mode and your medium scan mode, so your very wide width and your medium width, are pretty usable. They're not like, it's not perfect. It doesn't have priority track. The radar doesn't snap to the targets like it should if it was modeled according to real life, and it doesn't have like all the abilities. And no radar, by the way, has all of their abilities in the game. Like, radars in the game are pretty, like, as far as the stuff that happens behind the radar dish, are pretty poorly modeled. For instance, IFF, identification for friend or foe, should work in single target track. So like when you hardlock someone, you should also be able to IFF them. We still don't have that. Also, the radar changes. The Eurofighter has something which is called NCTR, NCTR, non-cooperative target recognition, which means on your radar, on the radar screen that's physically in the cockpit, you can highlight people and you can see what you're locked onto. It will recognize that, hey, this radar contact is an SU-27 or an SU-30, although it does kind of overlap the 27 and the 30 into just lumping them together as the same thing. It also means that when you're playing against people with radar off, you can identify them and distinguish them from AI. If you are on Afghanistan and you got a guy that's running a rafale in the mountains and you want to find him, you can kind of figure out where he's at, not just based on his dot, but you can figure out that, oh, this is an SU-27 flying up the valley, or this is a rafale. This is a pretty substantial change. This has like a good bit of utility. Now, with all of that being said, why has Blue Team evaporated? Why is nobody playing the Eurofighter? And I think it just kind of boils down to collective like group delusion of where the expectations were set so high in the sky that because it's just ends up being just kind of like another plane, has the same kind of limitations as everything else, where you don't just immediately obliterate everything with your pure aura. People aren't playing this plane anymore. The same thing kind of has happened a little bit to the Rafale. After about 2 weeks of the patch, people did try out the SU-30. I do see like more people kind of coming back to the Rafale. I really don't see a lot of people coming back to the Eurofighter because everyone that is kind of active in the Eurofighter community is just consigned themselves to the idea that the plane is completely awful and unplayable, and that's really not the case. The other kind of changes, though, by the way, are to the MAWS. So the MAWS got changed from an infrared MAWS to a radar MAWS, which means that it uses radar waves to detect the incoming missile, which means that it's better. But the big substantial change is that you now get a missile icon that is like range gated, so you can actually see the missile icon come at you, and you can determine what missile is closest relatively easily. In some cases, it doesn't always work. It's not perfect. It's not like the all-seeing eye of Sauron. Same thing with the way that the MAWS will dispense countermeasures. It will dispense countermeasures based on what it thinks the missile is. So it will detect an IR missile, and it'll see that it's not emitting radar waves, and it'll drop flares down instead of just dropping everything. You still do get, I think you still do get some like false alarms on flares and stuff, but it does seem to be a lot less. I might be wrong on that because well, honesty, it's like a lot of this match, I'm going to have so much stuff going on around me that, yeah, I have all the sensor stuff going on, but knowing which one to look at what time and determining which one is doing what can be a real pain in the ass, because the Su-30 has given Russia finally something that is, I would say, is competitive. I would say that it is on par with the Eurofighter as far as kind of like in-game utility, because it's a mediocre airframe with a good radar and just a shit ton of the best missiles in the game, where the guys that have it can just kind of, you know, lake of fire, lake of fire, lake of fire, lake of fire, R77, 77, 77, 77, 77, 77, 77. Where if you're playing blue side now and you're playing on a lopsided server like I am, you get the real authentic vintage Red 4 F-15E experience, but now you get it kind of in more spades. And because, I don't know, maybe blue team players just don't have the intestinal fortitude to suffer and get good or whatever, it means that they've kind of like evaporated. The game is seems to be a lot less popular these days than it used to be. There is no like horde of blue team players infinitely spawning in their F-15s, climbing to altitude and shooting missiles. There's no, it seems that like the littlest form of resistance has caused the blue team to crumple and quit the game, or run off to 12.7, where everything is incredibly handholdy, because really the only planes that are competitive, at least flight model wise, missile wise, ends up being you know, F-18s and Mirage 2000s and F-16s, and then you got the MiG-29, which is just kind of a very sad and mediocre plane. But as you can see right here, even with multiple targets, guys just spamming missiles, it's possible to notch most of them. Not all of the time. It doesn't always work. It's hard to do consistently. It's a hard skill to learn, and if your gameplay experience has been just twiddling your thumbs into a 97% win rate like blue teams have had for like the past 2 years, this new gameplay experience, this new gameplay loop might not be for you. At the same time, because I can get pressured now and I can actually, like, you know, have like interesting fights, I'll actually play the plane more, because, you know, just twiddling my thumbs to victory all the time is kind of boring. Now, the other thing that the British Eurofighter has going for it too, and I forgot to mention this, is there was also an overhaul to the interface for IRST. So IRST, the zoomed in box now is actually zoomed in, so that you can kind of better distinguish when it picks up targets. That means that the Eurofighter, instead of having like this little tiny little box where you had like the big box that represented your total search area, and then a little tiny box with the field of view, it means you got like a big box for field of view, and then you got kind of like this like radar scale looking thing that kind of tells you whether or not it's angled up or down. Another thing that Gaijin has done is allow you to disable the radar and IRST slewing to the horizon. So now you have the option to go to controls and bind the stabilization of the radar to the horizon, or stabilize it in relation to the plane. This means that instead of the radar pivoting to follow the horizon line when you go up, down, sideways, or whatnot, it will actually just follow the plane. So if you're nose down and you know that the guys above you have the radar angled up, you can kind of visualize that a little bit better. But also in the normal radar mode, where it is slewed to the horizon instead of in relation to the plane, they have added a horizon line, which makes the radar a lot more usable, because it's a lot easier to visualize the kind of sector of sky that your radar is scanning at any one time, because you can look at the horizon line, you'd be like, okay, I'm a little bit high up, I have the radar slewed slightly below the horizon to search down, that kind of thing. It has made the interface is better. Like, this is the best radar interface that we have had so far. It's a pretty substantial improvement. The only change to the Eurofighter that does kind of suck is the fact that they upped the RWR range from around 50 kilometers up to 100, which means your RWR scale is scaled to around 100 kilometers, which means that when you have planes that you would previously think are close, and you're like, okay, that guy's like 20, 30 kilometers out, well, now he's actually 50, he's like halfway across the map. It means that an improvement kind of backfired, and it made the actual interface a little bit worse. And the very last thing that I haven't mentioned so far has been the implementation of manual pitch override, the maneuver button, the Cobra button as people are calling it. And the reason I haven't mentioned it so far is it just didn't really make that big of a difference in the outcome of this game. And exceeding the angle of attack limitations on the Typhoon, getting it to really, really high AOAs, it has its uses, but the uses are very niche. Basically, the only use for them is in very close dogfights, and only in some circumstances. In most cases, conserving a little bit of energy, not pulling to the full angle of attack limit is actually a good thing for the plane. The plane does excel at a little bit higher speeds. The sustained turn rate is the best in the game, even better than the Rafale by like very, very tiny margins. The energy retention is also the best in the game, but what has happened is, because Eurofighter mains have wanted like the entire world, they want like the best angle of attack for the plane, the best turn rate, the best speed, the best climb, the best sensors, the best everything. Because Gaijin has kind of implemented it that way, it's really easy to find yourself in a maneuvering fight and be pulling too much AOA where you have actually blown all your speed. In a lot of ways, the way the grip and flight model was implemented was actually better from an intuitive gameplay perspective, because you were only limited to 26 AOA, and because you were turning at lower AOAs, you actually bled a lot less speed, even though instinctually you would like pull the stick all the way to the rear, you wanted like the max thing. Like, it kept you in those ranges, those angle attack ranges, where the plane was really efficient. Whereas the Eurofighter, you can get to ranges where it's not super efficient, and you end up in this like really like slow speed part where you do feel like you're stuck, because you're stuck there at like 35 AOA or 30 AOA, just plowing through the air sideways. Whereas if it did have a 24-degree angle attack limitation, you would retain energy a lot more, and you'd end up actually having higher, probably higher sustained turn rates, kind of effectively, because you wouldn't be going into those speed ranges where the plane does bleed a lot of speed. But because you have the whole entire world, you can do everything with it, and nobody knows how to do anything with it. Eurofighter mains will tell you that the plane is completely abysmal at dogfighting, and the dogfighting is irrelevant, and the flight performance is irrelevant, and the only thing that matters is missiles. And there is a little bit of truth to the only thing that matters is missiles, but I mean, the enemy team has Su-30s. I'm doing a game against basically nothing but Su-30s, where they're just spamming all over the missiles, which kind of makes sense. That's kind of what the plane, the niche that it fulfills, because maneuverability-wise, the Su-30 is nothing to write home about beyond the thrust vectoring kind of flip around, fly backwards kind of gimmick, which is reasonably strong once you master it. Like, once I get the plane, I'm gonna probably play it a little bit, play a lot of duels in it, and try to figure out like where to actually use it. But most people are not capable of doing that. The only person that I would consider like an actual threat in a dogfight in an Su-30, for the most part, on a consistent basis, would be simply Sinful, and that's it. The only other plane that I consider to be a consistent threat against the Eurofighter happens to be the Rafale, because in turn performance, the Rafale basically matches the Eurofighter in every performance metric, and then the weapons that the Rafale carries does mean managing that space gets a little bit harder, just because of the high off-bore sight capability of the Mica and the Magic 2, where if you don't manage your space just perfectly against the Rafale in a dogfight, especially if you merge at higher speeds or at higher altitudes, that's a really hard fight. And it's not unwinnable, but it is difficult, and I do understand the frustration with having to deal with Mica EM spam. But I also understand the frustration of having to deal with, being outnumbered and having a bajillion missiles being fired at you at any one time. This is the not the new reality for every game, but this is going to be the reality for some of the games that you find. And I play these games because I like them. I do like having to play defensively. I do like having to use my brain and kind of figure out different play styles and how to adapt to the game as it changes, because the way that you play a plane is going to be impacted by the environment that it's in. It's going to be impacted by the amount of players. How many competent players are there on the enemy team? How outnumbered is your team? Does your team have any high altitude presence? Because the BVR thing, while it's a good idea to try to attempt BVR, that really doesn't work if you don't have any team presence and the enemy team has presence, because it's just a scalability factor. There's a point where if you have enough people on the map and there's enough missiles flying in every direction, you can kind of get up to high altitude, you can kind of filter them through. Whereas if I went to high altitude here myself, I'm spending more time being defensive against the just kind of bajillion missiles being fired at me from side aspect at any one time, that I don't really have the luxury of engaging in BVR. But just because I don't doesn't mean that I'm completely useless. It just means that I'm mostly useless. Like right here, this guy just kind of keeps shooting missiles, which is fair because he already knows that if he does merge, he's just kind of favored to not win. That doesn't mean that I don't make attempts at BVR. It doesn't mean that you should always just stick to the deck. I really try to mix up my playstyle throughout like the course of a game, so that people don't think like, oh, he's going to go here. Now, on Afghanistan, the big thing is map awareness and kind of being aware of like where people hang out and kind of where your safe areas are, because the northern airfields kind of form like this funnel, and it funnels everyone into the valley, and that kind of like gap between your airfields and getting into like what I call the toilet bowl is kind of a shooting gallery. But then you kind of come out on this right side. This valley here is also like a really popular area for people to kind of sneak up on your spawn. And kind of the red side game plan for Afghanistan is to push up to the edge of your mountains and then shoot you as you're coming out of your spawn. And then kind of like the opposite side, the blue side game plan is to basically do the same thing in reverse. But the red side spawns are a little bit more flat. I don't know if they're easier to get out of. I honestly don't have a problem getting out of either one of them. But this is just one of those games where I'm going to have to adapt. And when it comes to using the radar, I will use the wide pattern when I get into like the flat areas of the map, when I'm trying to like scan like the wide valley of the toilet bowl across. The radar itself, the kind of utility value of it is mainly limited to detecting targets at like 20 kilometers beyond. At close range, yeah, it still works, but if you're within visual range, you should be using the radar HMD, because that is going to be much faster. You have to make kind of a deliberate effort to switch between your radar modes, and kind of like make a deliberate effort of like thinking about, should I be using my radar for long range detection? Should I be using the narrow scan and the wide pattern, or the medium one? The medium one and the wide ones are actually, they're usable now. They're not bad. They're really good at getting a really quick situational awareness picture for targets at long range, getting kind of like a general idea of like where everyone's at without getting too close. The downside to it is if you're shooting radar beams all over the map and you're outnumbered like I am here, that just kind of becomes a homing beacon for everyone to kind of fly at you. And one of the things I've noticed lately, probably in the past like 2 or 3 months of playing top tiers, a lot more people are aware that the radar is kind of a homing beacon, that a lot of people are running radar off now. A lot of people are running the radar off, getting within visual range, popping up, and then shooting their missile at the last second, because doing these longer engagements, because people know how to defend against them a lot better than they used to, because multipathing is still a thing, or because people are just playing on maps like Denmark, where it's pretty easy to just multipath everything that isn't like just coming straight top down at you. That the long range BVR missile engagement thing it's still a thing, but really the long range missiles are there to create pressure as opposed to actually win the game for you. But even when I'm outnumbered, I don't win everything. I can dodge a lot of missiles, but like right here, I think I die here. Like I think I'm boned. I don't think this is gonna work. We're trying to make it work, but it's just, I understand the misery of like being a new player and going, I have to dodge everything here. I don't think it's gonna happen all the time. That's why I also showcase this game, is because I want people to have realistic expectations of top tier, as opposed to me and whatever. I just go in and get 40 kills, never die, always at my base. Nothing bad ever happens to me. And get another merge. And this is like the flat part of Afghanistan. Afghanistan, you can kind of, a lot of people play it as if it's a flat map in the middle. It means that a lot of the times the engagements I'm having to defend against a guy that's high up shooting at me, and then a guy that's down low trying to force the merge and win. And the thing is, if you force the merge against a Typhoon, if you're not killing him in the first turn, the first 2 turns or whatever, you're kind of hopeless. Like this guy here, he's trying to leverage the 73s, and it's just not going to work. This is not going to work here. I do think there are ways to leverage R73s a little bit better than this guy's doing, but this guy's experienced. He's not a brand new player. But he's in the SU-30, and the SU-30 is good. I think it does change the dynamic. It does make it very, very hard for me to hide from the collective PEZA radar annihilation of all of the SU-30s and then all of the missiles. It is rather I don't think it's annoying because, like, obviously, like, I picked this game on purpose. I literally picked up this game for this kind of gameplay experience because I do find most top tier games of recent memory have been really kind of like bad, like really bad in the sense that they're boring, not very fun for me. And that's why it's one of the reasons I kind of went back to props. I like props as much as I like slop tier jets, but it's neither here nor there. It's everywhere. The missiles are everywhere. The R-77 OP because it killed me, but it's not OP when it kills my enemies. Same thing with spawn camping. I like it when I spawn camp, but it's bad when people spawn camp me. You know, it's the whole deal. It's like top tier is better than it's ever been, but it's War Thunder. It's top tier. It brings out the absolute worst in people, regardless of who they are, and I really just kind of like embrace that. Now, as far as the different playstyles of the plane, you can go up, you can do BVR. Your radar is good enough now. It's not perfect, it's not great, it's not seamless, it's not the data fusion Eye of Sauron that people want it to be. The IRST on the British one and the Italian one it's a very good tool to have. It's very good for these situations where I can maintain a good bit of situational awareness, especially forward, while not just blasting everyone with radar waves, which I'm going to have to do. I'm playing different parts of the map. I'm kind of switching up. Like, I think this is, I might be shooting into the valley right here from one of my spawns, but I think this is kind of like towards the left side spawn instead of the right side spawn. So I'm going to kind of go a little bit towards like the center mountains and kind of lurk around here and try to pick up people on IRST, fly around the map, and kind of ambush them with AIM-9Ms. AIM-9Ms, by the way, are still incredibly strong. They're very well suited for this kind of play style. I pop my radar on, these guys pop up. They pop up pretty quickly. And just right there, I zoom in, I use the Nictor to verify that they're actual SU-27 so that these missiles are worth shooting at them. And the HUD symbology, all of the squares are enemies, all of the circles are either friendlies or just unidentified. And I pop up over the mountains, I shoot my missiles. These guys are going to go down into multipath. I turn the radar off, and I'm really just kind of trying to engage in some kind of like ambush play style. Like, it gets them on the deck, it gets them a little bit defensive, lets them know that I'm here, because if I keep following them into my mountains, there's a good chance that there's a guy to my left that would pick me up beforehand. So I'm like, whatever. I come in trying to find whatever guy I can, just to get a 9M off, get a couple of 9M shots. And the 9Ms being invisible means that you don't have a smoke trail going back to you, so when a guy's looking around, he actually does have to see your plane. We got the little rangefinder on the IRST here. Wait to get just close enough. We do got a contrail above there. That's another SU-30. I think that's probably one of them coming out of my base. Kind of wish I had a AIM-120 here. If I would have saved an AIM-120, I could have shot at the contrailer ahead of me, but we'll see if we can handle them all. We got a Rafale behind us, an SU-30 behind us, another, like, more missiles. I'm gonna try to multipath here. Hopefully this guy doesn't see me. I think I actually eat the missile here, or that might be a different clip actually. But we come in, we get some good ambush kills. We had like a good little ambush there. We're gonna dip back into the hills, go back to base, resupply. And the nice thing about the Eurofighter, the nice thing about having all of the sensors, is that you have the luxury of kind of playing the game any way you want and adapting to the situation as it comes at you. And this is one of the reasons I don't really buy into this idea that's perpetuated by Eurofighter advocates that the plane is bad or unplayable just because the Rafale exists or whatever, because you actually do have a lot of flexibility. Your two main loadouts are going to be 6 AIM-9Ms and 4 AIM-120s, or you're going to do 6 plus 2, so 6 AIM-120s and 2 9Ms, and you have IRST, you have a pretty good radar, you have the best flight model in the game, bar maybe the Rafale, depending on manual control limits, if that actually factors into how you play the game. And in comparison to something like an F-15 or an F-16, those loadouts and the tools that you have give you a lot more flexibility. Like the F-16, in its current state, the 16C has been kind of power creeped because it's only got 6 missiles. It can carry any combination of 9Ms and 120s, but you only have 6. You can carry 6 9Ms on the Eurofighter and 4 120s where you basically have the ideal deck ratting loadout of the F-16 plus a bunch of 120s, which is good. And you also have IRST, which is good for deck ratting. You have more countermeasures, you have MAWs, you have so much stuff going on for you. The fact that just a couple of other planes exist and might be more competitive or more suited to your playstyle or suited to kind of the overall environment of EC doesn't make the plane bad. Like, in all honesty, I've played the 15C a lot recently, and I've played a little bit of 16, and really the 15C, while it's still okay because 8 AIM-120s is still pretty good, pretty reliable, the flexibility that you have with the plane is significantly hampered by the fact that a lot of the things now, the flight performance has kind of caught up to it, where something like a 27, a J11, a J10, a lot of stuff on the red side is able to outmaneuver that plane pretty, like, reliably. And that goes doubly so when you have something like the Eurofighter. It means that something like the 15, in the same kind of situation that I'm putting myself in here, where I'm fighting multiple opponents at the same time, the 15 isn't going to have the energy retention, not going to have the kinematics, not going to have the ability to quickly get to the notch counterfire and then avoid this situation. The 15C, while it's good, it's a plane that really needs to have at least some team presence to really kind of thrive. Otherwise, you get pushed by more than one person, you eventually run out of countermeasures and you die. And the same thing can be said for the 16. The 16, you only get 6 missiles, you run out, guy spams a bunch of missiles at you, and you die. And that's one of the things I find funny right now, is that the Eurofighter European population, whatever you want to call it, has basically left Sim. It is basically non-existent. Like, a lot of people, if you read the forums, are like, I don't want to play the plane, it's unplayable. It's they did it so dirty that it's bad, and then the only plane they'll play is like the Rafale or the Su-30 or like whatever they figure is better, and that kind of does detract from the game. Like, at least when Red Side was suffering, when the Su-27 was abysmal, we still played the damn plane. We still went out, we still played it, we still did everything we could to make it work. The same thing can be said for American mains right now in things like F-15s and F-16s. The planes have been power crept, where things have caught up to them or things have surpassed them, but they're still there. The majority of the players that I run into on blue side are still playing American planes, and we do have the F-18, which does change things up a little bit, but the F-18 doesn't add any real unique capabilities beyond being a plane that can carry 10 AMRAAMs as opposed to 8. It didn't really alter anything as far as like new radars, new mechanics, doesn't have MAWs, doesn't have like really anything unique beyond being like the first American flight model that does angle of attack funny things like Mirage 2000 and Su-27. That's actually really cool. It makes the F-18 really fun, and it helps round out American teams with some kind of capability, so that the capabilities are overall across the board like a little bit more symmetric, a little bit more varied, a little bit more interesting. But the fact that red teams have the Su-30 now, and the fact that red teams are still playing, or red players are still playing, and blue side is basically not using one of their best tools in the toolbox because it's just not that much more power crept over everything else. It's like, it's really, really silly when you think about it. It means that, like, what's the expectation? Do we just want the plane to automatically win the game for us? Do we want the plane to do everything better and then some? Do they need to add, like, the active radar version of this that has, like, the 120 degrees left and right field of view with meteor missiles to finally put the British players back on top, where because they were suffering so long because the Gripen got nerfed into the ground. Keep in mind, the Gripen getting nerfed into the ground was actually like, they moved the turn rate down by like 1.5 degrees total, and that did make a big difference in energy retention. But it went from being the best flight model in the game at the time to being the best flight model in the game, but just by a slightly smaller margin. Like the Air Superiority Championship, whatever, Duda 4v4 Air RB thing, in the last 4 versus 4, 6 of the 8 planes were Gripens, which just goes to show how abysmal the plane was nerfed into the ground, where it was the meta-defining pick for the tournament. Anyways, that's a discussion for another day. I'm going to focus on the Eurofighter. I'm going to say, hey, if blue is suffering, and you got the Eurofighter, and you got the British Eurofighter, you should play it again. It's worth an attempt. It is perfectly usable. It's not seamlessly perfect, but it's perfectly usable. And that's going to be a Beer Thunder.